Welcome back to the Abundant Harvest Homestead. I'm Papa Pepper. Today we're talking about wood stoves because if you're unaware of it, there is a war on wood stoves. There's a lot of people trying to make them seem like they're an absolutely terrible thing for the environment. Like people shouldn't be able to have them. And there seems to be a lot of information being put out that I would not consider to be accurate. I would consider the information to be kind of making it seem like, oh, this is such a ridiculously hard piece of technology to use, that's why it's been left in the past by most people in modern society. And I don't find that to be true at all. From our own personal point of view, we used to live in Wisconsin, about 750 miles away from here, and the winters were significantly colder and more severe than they are here. Here, I can look out my window, I see snow on the ground right now here in the Ozarks. I also see it's maybe 20 degrees out or something like that. So we like having this. I'm getting a little probably too hot sitting this close to it right now. When I lived in Wisconsin, I realized, if there's an extended power outage here, my entire house freezes. I have no way to keep my family warm. And a lot of people think about different heaters that you could run maybe off of a generator as a backup power supply if the grid goes down. But again, your generators are going to be outside. You're not going to have them in your house. Some people who don't know much about using them wind up poisoning themselves by running generators in their house. But if you have them outside in a crisis event, somebody will probably steal your generator. That's kind of how a lot of people are. So you got to watch out for that. For me, I said, you know what? If the power goes out right now and it's extended in the winter, as I was sitting up there in Wisconsin, I'm going, I can't heat my house. That's going to be very severe for my family. I said, I'd like to live somewhere where if things go really bad, I can throw a log on the fire, light a lantern, and maybe kill a sheep. That would be a lot better. When we eat, we have light, we stay warm. So one of the big things we wanted to do when we moved down here was to put in a wood stove. For us, it has been a huge blessing. We put it in partway through the winter last year, and this winter it's been here the whole time. If you think about a wood stove, does it produce smoke? Yes, it does. Does it add to, climate change and the greenhouse gases and all that stuff? Well, it depends if you really understand the agenda behind all that or not. There is an agenda that's going to pose, global existence threatening type events at the forefront of everything, and then from that, we're killing us all, which is kind of the goal of a lot of people anyways, to drastically reduce the population. But they're going to use that just to kind of strong arm people into making changes they would never go for otherwise. If you think about this, I'm burning trees right now. Over the course of their life, trees absorb carbon dioxide. Okay? When I burn them, that same carbon that they absorb through their lifetime is going to be released back in to the atmosphere. Essentially, it's kind of neutral. And, here on our property, we've got a lot of trees. So the trees that are outside right now are the ones who can start absorbing this carbon from burning them. Am I posing a giant threat to everyone by having a wood stove that I'm going to kill the entire, world's population, and I'm going to affect climate change, and we're going to add to global warming and everyone's going to die? No, I don't believe that at all. And by comparison, you can always point to somebody worse than you, but this gives me an opportunity. This is our primary source of heat right now. We have not had our furnace on this winter for months now. It would be nice, in a lot of situations to have, your furnace as your main source, but then have this as a backup. Yeah, that was my original goal, was just to start there and then transition, where now this is our primary source of heat, and if things get really bad or something else happens, we can kick in the furnace as well. This is going to be far greener, if you will, than fossil fuels. Absolutely. And if you look at like forest mismanagement, for instance, because they don't want anyone touching forests in a lot of areas. They don't clean up the forests. When a fire starts, boom, you've got entire states that have had some pretty major forest fires, you know, in recent history. There's some states that almost always seem to be burning. Think about that. What's the comparison of forest mismanagement leading to these widespread fires that are putting up all sorts of stuff? And it's not just burning wood then, it's burning homes and cars and plastics and tires and everything in its path, compared to this. Well, this pales in comparison to that, you know. Also, look at space stuff. I think there was 114 launches in 2020. If you look at them, they don't even always just head up. They kind of head up and take a left, or they go off some other direction. To quote Elon Musk, he said you can tell it's real because it looks so fake. You know, that's what he had to say about it. So what does the average family in America, for instance, benefit from NASA or from SpaceX or from all of that? There's a ton of stuff that gets put out into our environment, a ton of stuff worse than just carbon, that happens from these launches. What do we benefit from it? If you think that in a couple years we're going to colonize Mars, you're sadly mistaken. You're sadly mistaken. If you think we're going to colonize the moon, based on their more recent admissions, we can't even go there. So how are we going to, you know what I mean? There's no benefit. Here, I have a benefit. I can take care of my own family and keep us warm through the winter. One nice thing about moving as we did is we have far less severe winters, so it's much easier than if I was going to try to produce enough heat in my native Wisconsin to keep my family warm. And another thing too is, you know, we're living kind of modestly here. I could have a 2,000 square foot home, and that's going to be a whole different thing to try to heat that with wood as opposed to this. One interesting thing I came across recently, it was just on my, you know, Google feed, it was suggested to me, was something from Bob Vila. If you guys don't know him, he's been a handyman, had a number of shows and stuff like that. But there's a couple things that I did not appreciate in the article that just seemed to be misinformation and seemed to be making things seem way more difficult than this. One sentence says, of course, it's a lot of work to fell trees, saw them into logs, and split those logs into stove-length pieces. I've felled trees. I've cut logs before, but I have never in my life split them into stove-length pieces. The general way to do something is you cut them into whatever length you want for your stove, and then you split them. To think about having a big long log and having to split it into stove-length pieces, it's just, the phrasing there is wrong. It paints a very inaccurate picture, and I'm not very impressed by it because anyone should know you cut the logs into stove-length pieces and then you split them. Okay? Much easier to split through somewhere between 16 to 24 inches worth of, you know, log than to cut a giant log and then split it into stove-length pieces. That doesn't make any sense. Another interesting sentence in this article is, even apart from the amount of labor involved, heating the home with a wood stove takes real commitment. Every morning you need to start a new fire. They say every morning you need to start a new fire. Hey, a couple of my little peppers over here can hear me. You guys have to start a new fire every morning?
No, sir.
No, sir, no, sir. That were their answers. They're, what, 11 and 9? 10. So I've got a 10 and an 11-year-old over there who go, no, you don't have to start a new fire every morning. Open question. What do we do to keep a fire going in the morning?
We put wood on it?
You put wood on it. There's a bed of coals that happens. You know, before I go to bed, I'll throw a couple logs in here. If I wake up in the middle of the night and have to use the bathroom where it feels like it's a bit cold, I'll throw a couple logs in here. When I wake up in the morning, I'll throw a couple logs in here. Again, since this is our primary source, we kind of keep it rolling. You can have a fire go for quite a while as long as you keep adding fuel to the fire. Last year when we started it, we went for quite a while without ever restarting it. We just kind of kept it going, kept it going. It's not that hard. You don't need to start a new fire every morning. That's a ridiculous statement, and I have to believe that Mr. Bob Vila and the other guy who wrote the article with him would be aware of this. So why in the world you say, oh, it takes real commitment. Every morning you're going to have to spend all the time to start a fire. Now I'll tell you what, if we lived in the city life, and if I took off to work every day and Mama took off to work every day and our children went to public school, it'd be a much different situation, because a house that we would have, we would not really live in, because while we were awake, we'd all be gone in different directions and the house would be empty. So it wouldn't be a good idea to have a fire and everyone takes off for 8, 9, 10 hours every day. If that's your primary source, yeah, your pipes will freeze, your house will get cold, you'll probably have water condensation and mold and mildew issues. Yeah, I get that. But again, we're trying to get away from a divided life. We don't need 2 or 3 incomes, main sources of income that are full-time jobs just to stay afloat, because we choose not to have any debt. That makes a lot of sense to me. Why pay a bunch of interest just to rent something from the bank? I don't like that idea, so we do things a little differently. So if we're home throughout the day primarily, it's not that hard to keep a fire going, have it be our primary source of heat. It's not as difficult as some people believe. If you've got nice, dry, seasoned wood, and if you have it available to you, that's another thing. It can be a cost if you have to go purchase wood every winter just to make it through. Here, we're developing raw land. Because we're developing raw land, we have wood available to us. In fact, if you look around our homestead, we've got tons of wood. A lot of this stuff is about 4 to 5 feet long. It's from when I made my driveway, and I just cut it short enough to be able to pull it off to the side. I didn't split it into fireplace sizes, but I made it small enough that I was able to tuck it to the side. I've got barn tin over the top of it to keep it out of the elements, because I don't want it all to rot, but I want to preserve it and protect it, and begin to start cutting that up and working our way through it. We're actually doing a test with our woodshed. There also happens to be some hay in there for some of the animals, but to see if this particular woodshed full of wood is enough to last us through the winter or not. So far, we're doing pretty good. Not sure how it's going to last by the end of it, but all of the firewood that we're burning in our house this year comes from this woodshed, just so we can see how we make it through and if we're going to need more or how much we would have left. If we run out, I've got a bunch more split and ready to go. I've just still got to put some barn tin on top of that, which I should do pretty soon. I've got more logs in a similar fashion up here over by the garden, and where we're expanding some stuff on our property, there's actually a lot of downed wood that's split up already. For the fireplace, I just got to collect it and tuck it away somewhere. So depending on the type of environment somebody lives in, there can be plenty of wood that you wouldn't need to go buy any. And even some of these, see that branch there? I can remove that branch. That's got quite a big girth on it. Same thing with that one there. And turn that into firewood while leaving the tree to stand. Same thing up here. Some of these I'm going to prune back so I don't lose the tree, but I'll lose some of those lower hanging branches, and that can be dried and used as firewood. So just because you're trying to get it from your own land doesn't mean that you've got to cut down trees. You could actually just do some pruning on some bigger trees and get quite a lot. And sometimes people do that to like thin out a forest, open up the understory, get more growth underneath for like our sheep or something. There's good reasons to do things like that. So for us here, we're generating more wood than we can use on a regular basis, just because we're in that entry level kind of beginning of our homestead life here. The trees that are here, if you don't touch an area, the forest grows back. That's one thing a lot of people don't understand about deforestation. You could take a lot of these woods that are otherwise just burned to the ground. If you took a mile swath out of all these hundreds or thousands of acres, you just took a mile swath, took all the trees down, and then you waited a year or two and you took a swath out somewhere else through that, all that stuff you took down would start growing back That's what happens. We have a constant battle to kind of keep the woods pushed back from the area we've tried to turn into an open area. They keep growing. It's what they do. So it's not that hard to have them be a renewable resource. Here, I can't make my own coal per se. You know, I'm not digging down in the earth and mining coal. I'm not taking care of my own natural gas. I'm not making my own propane. So a lot of the traditional ways of heating, I'm not doing. I'm not generating my own electricity right now. Are we considering moving to solar one day and heading that direction? Sure, I like that. It beats some of the meters and stuff they're trying to throw from the power company these days. In fact, here, we pay extra just to opt out of the upgraded meter because we find that to be wise. But wood is something that I can generate myself. I could never import any wood, and on my property, I think I could be set for the rest of my life, probably the rest of my children's life, the rest of my grandchildren's life. You know, we could generate enough wood on this property to take care of us. As you saw with my woodshed, we're doing an experiment right now just to see how much we use on an average winter, you know, whatever that means. But just if one woodshed full can get us through the year. I plan on building a couple others just to keep our wood very seasoned, very dry, very ready to be used. And, you know, it gives me an empowerment to be able to take care of keeping my family warm on my own. That's important to me. It takes one more bill and it crosses it off the list for me. I don't need to be spending as much in electricity, or I don't need to be spending as much in propane or in other sources, you know, whatever you may use. I can just use the wood stove. That is so much easier for me. And as you see people really fighting against people heating their homes with wood stoves, and even insurance companies, a lot of times it's going to cost more to have house insurance if you have a fireplace or a wood stove in it. Well, guess what? A ton of buildings are lost because of electrical fires every year. A ton of homes burn down because of that. Do they charge you extra because your home has electricity too? Well, no, they don't. You know, there is an agenda at play. To try to take this away from the common man is a way to try to enslave him. It's a way to try to make him a dependent and less independent. For us, we don't trust a lot of the powers that be. We don't trust the effectiveness of a lot of the stuff that's been set up. A lot of it seems like the game Mousetrap, where you just one piece at a time, you slowly build this trap, eventually you catch the mouse. You divide and conquer the family with the Industrial Revolution, the government school system, the women's suffrage movement. You take debt, you introduce that as commonplace. You take young teenagers and tell them, hey, why don't you sign up for a couple $100,000 worth of debt right away, and we'll see if you happen to get a job after you get these degrees. Completely ridiculous that people don't own their educations, they don't own their houses, they don't own their vehicles, all these things. They appear to have them. And people will show them off. Oh, look at my new house. You show up and be like, wow, your bank has a really nice house. How much extra are you going to have to pay in interest to own it? When's it actually going to be yours? You know, nobody likes those questions. They'd find that to be offensive, but that's the reality of the matter. That's the reality of the matter. I remember when I had no debt and really nothing. I thought, wow, I'm doing so much better than so many people because they're in giant holes. I want to live a life that's wise. I want to live a life that's intentional. I want to be dependent upon myself and God as much as possible, rather than these systems and setups of man. I don't want to crawl into some trap because they make it look nice and then being like, haha, power's out and now you can't go to work, or haha, there's some virus, you can't go to work anymore, we're not going to stimulate you, we're just going to take everything from you because you never owned it in the first place. Wood stoves, I like them. There's a reason we have them. I like being able to do this from my own property, and I'd watch out. You know, if you really want to know, talk to people who have them. Don't read the propaganda. Don't listen to the news medias on it. Don't sit there and listen to all the propaganda. Talk to people who actually live that life and actually have them. Yes, this would be a bad idea for a lot of people to try to have this as their primary source of income or their primary source of heat. If they don't have land, they don't have their own trees, they got to buy it all. If they're gone from their house for most of the day, it wouldn't make sense at all to try to have this be your primary. But I'll tell you what, if you have an opportunity to install one as a backup, that could be a huge benefit and blessing to you guys. It's a little bit about my thoughts about wood stoves and why we like them. I don't think they're a crazy danger. I don't think they're a crazy threat to the environment. I think they're a very useful tool in the hands of the right people. And I consider ourselves to be some of the right people to have such a tool in our hands. We'll see you next time. Papa out.